standing at the border of what we used to know. 5 points in the darkness make a different kind of show. They say we're better together, but what do they know when the stars align differently down here below? And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. Remember all the stories that your granddad told about a republic that wouldn't be controlled. Now the suits in the city say we've all been sold, but there's a fire burning that just won't get old. And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. They draw their lines on paper, we draw ours in the sand. Some dreams are getting closer, while some don't understand. Don't understand. The highways stretch forever toward a setting sun, where cattle graze on memories of battles won. They say unity's the answer, but maybe we're done with playing by the rules of the chosen one. Oh, maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. Our own sky. Our own sky.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is that time again for Late Night Coffee Talk, and I'm excited. Look, this is our first back-to-back in a while. I did all my explaining last week, so I'm not going to do all the explaining this week. But so very glad to be here with you, and so glad that so many of you are here as well. And looking forward to seeing many of you joining us over on the Texian app, right over at the Texian. It's cool. If you don't know what it is, go to texian.app. We'll talk about that here in a bit. because even without pulling up the questions that have come in via email, I am almost certain that there are some questions there about it, and I'm sure there'll be some that come in over chat as well. But anyway, let's get rolling for tonight. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and this is Late Night Coffee Talk. This is that time where generally once a week on Thursday night, I take a break from working on Texas independence. I come in here, pour yet another cup of coffee. See, it's the real deal. It's coffee. Fire up the cameras, all this rig and everything else, and I take your questions. We talk about whatever's on your mind, sometimes whatever's on my mind, and no subject is off limits. You want to talk about Texas, you want to talk about TNM, you want to talk about Texas politics, you want to talk about cultural issues, you want to talk about the larger world of geopolitics, self-determination, even personal questions. I answer them as best I can, right? I heard that somebody got rather rude in chat last week because I didn't get to their question. And, we try to get to all of them. We try to prioritize as best we can. If things have been answered elsewhere, then maybe somebody will take care of it in chat. But here's my message to the guy who decided to get rude to our folks in chat last week. I don't work for you. The last I heard, involuntary servitude was abolished. So you don't get to come into our house and tell us how to do things. And I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt because we didn't get to your question the 50th time you asked it in chat. Perhaps if you were that soft, this might not be the place for you, right? So that being said, I know everybody. Well, let's just say I'm optimistic that everyone tonight will be rather polite because remember, we're all on the same team, at least the most of us, trying to make Texas a self-governing independent nation. So let's just remember that as we move forward tonight. But that being said, here's what you got to do if you want to participate. First and foremost, I'm not even going to start with the others. I'm just going to go straight to talking about the Texian app, right? Go to texian.app if you don't know what I'm talking about. But last week was the first time that we live streamed from our very own Do It All app. I mean, no tech overlords, no Silicon Valley standing between us and you. We launched our own platform, not just for streaming and videos, although it does host all that stuff, but the network for pro-independence Texans to get together and not just get together, right? Because we always talk about it's not enough to eat, meet, greet, retreat, but to give you tools and information and action and coordination and networking and all that other kind of stuff that is necessary for Texas to become an independent nation. So right now, we are streaming live on the Texian app. And some of you are watching on the computer, some of you are watching on your phone. Whatever that looks like, wherever you are, we're glad that you're here, and jump over in chat and be sure to ask your questions there. Additionally, if you are watching us on any of those other platforms, you could drop your question in chat there as well. It's all the same, right? YouTube and X and Facebook and everybody, they're all doing, it's all the Rumble, it's all the same thing. They have a chat, drop it in there, it pops up over here, Kara triages and tries to keep us within time and keep the conversation moving. But just drop it in chat. Be much appreciated. And if that's not how you want to handle it, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, just drop an email to coffeetalk@thetnm.org. That's coffeetalk@thetnm.org. Oh yeah, I probably should do this. It'll be there at the bottom of your screen. It's like literally there right now. Okay, so that's where it is. So drop your email there, and some of you, like I said, have already done that. So that being said, let's get down to some questions. But before I do that, all right, I got to tell you guys a story. So of a personal nature. Some of you may remember that verse from Scripture that talks about many are called, but few are chosen. Uh, that is really the description of my interaction with jury duty, right? And this week, I had jury duty right out of the gate this week. I had jury duty. And as many times as I've been called, as many times as I have shown up, I literally got picked for the first time in my adult life this week for jury duty. And some people may go, big deal, big whoop, but it's been kind of a brass ring for me. I've wanted to be on a jury, and I got my wish this week. It was fun. I got picked as a jury foreman, which was kind of funny. Apparently, when you have a sense of humor, that definitely puts you in the front running for that. And our deliberations were rather short, and it was a bit of a fun experience. But I thought I'd share that with you because some of you had asked, you know, some people, not all of you, but some have asked, I think it was Tuesday, like, where were you for half a day Tuesday? And I'd posted on the Texian app about my juror number was juror number 1. And so some of you got a big laugh out of that. But anyway, quite interesting. But there it was. There was my experience. Let's get to some questions tonight. Man, I have got a, yeah, let's go ahead and take this one from chat. Hang on, let me just verify something really quickly. Yeah, there we go. Chris Milton asked, how much money did I make for jury duty? I don't know. They really didn't talk about it too much. But anyway, it was really funny. Just the whole scenario was hilarious. All right, let's get to some questions. This one came in from YouTube. Liberty Bell says, did you read the news that ExxonMobil's board just voted to reorganize in Texas instead of New Jersey? This could greatly help Texas, in my opinion. Texas has all the global oil, gas, and refining. And so, Liberty Bell, I'm going to share a secret. Yes, I have heard of it, and I heard about it, and I have thoughts. But that being said, let me tell you where I heard it, because it's a pretty straightforward situation here. Look at that. I'm going to drop this on the screen. There we go. Look at that. That is the Texian Partisan, and the Texian Partisan is chocked full of news from a perspective of the T&M and Texit and Texas independence. It's where it is. And literally right there, Exxon dumps New Jersey, picks Texas as their sovereign home. So my first thing is to tell you, be sure to if you're not reading the Texian Partisan, if you're not subscribed over there, be sure to do that, because pumping out lots of great news and articles, all from a Texas perspective, just about every day. And not just news, but culture and deep analysis and things of that nature. So be sure you're checking out the Texian Partisan, okay? But yes, I have heard that, and it's part of a much larger trend of all these corps coming back to Texas. It is phenomenal economically for us. There's no doubt about it. When these companies are in all these different states, and there are some people who are going to complain about this, right? Because there's always this concern about, are they going to come bring whatever it is that they do down here? Particularly we hear it with Silicon Valley companies. But ExxonMobil's a little bit different. I think a full third of their workforce is already here, and I live right down here on the refinery coast, and so very familiar with them. But let's not forget that ExxonMobil is really just coming home, right? This was where they got their start. And so, but having these companies that long ago moved out of Texas, these big pillars of the Texas economy, particularly when it comes to oil and gas and energy, it's not necessarily a bad situation. It's really good for us economically. There may be some other effects, but I think it remains to be seen as to whether we absorb those effects or do whatever. But for today, I celebrate, but I keep both eyes open, as I do anytime I hear major corporations moving here. But it's a very clear indicator that Texas is doing something right that the rest of the states in the United States are not doing. I mean, you could talk about states that are politically aligned, sort of that have sort of the same political bent or same attitude toward business, but they didn't choose those states. They chose here. And it tells you, it sets up, I think, a really valid comparison, at least on the surface, that says that Texas, when it comes to business, is doing it right. And it's not a bad situation, as I said, on the surface. But let's keep an eye on that, okay? But thank you for your question, Liberty Bell. All right. Excuse me. All right. Let's get over here to the man. All right. Let's go here to the email. Okay. So this is from John. He says, I have refrained from sending this email since prior to March the 3rd. We're being bombarded with various political ads. I drive for a living, got to see various Huffines ads along the roadway, and every one that espoused Huffines being a MAGA Republican or the TV commercial endorsed by President Trump were off-putting and annoying. Add to that an endorsement by none other than Ted Cruz, and no thank you. The fact that his family purchased the formerly known Zorro Ranch is just another question mark for me. So it is what it is, but for me, not any real cause for celebration. He may very well have signed the pledge, but many politicians take an oath to a constitution they expletive on every day. I expect nothing less. Okay, so I don't see a question mark in there, so I'm guessing you want me to comment on that. So, look, here's the bottom line, and I want you guys to. There are a couple things in John's email that I want to just make abundantly clear. For us, we don't endorse, right? That's the thing that people get a lot of times incorrect. We do not endorse candidates. What we do is we have a pledge that candidates and office holders can sign. And it's effectively a public oath taking to the principles in that pledge. Okay. And then we make that public for everyone to look and evaluate the candidate and make their own decision. Now, for us as an organization, we got to keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is we need all the muscle we can to have candidates that put Texas first. Texas first, Texas forever, right? That support our right to vote on our future, but in all things, put Texas first. Put Texas and Texans first. Okay, so it's a pledge that becomes effectively a litmus test for the primary mission of the TNM. And so beyond that, people have to make their own choices. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you about the Zorro Ranch business in Huffines. When Huffines signed the pledge, Huffines meant it. I have had more than one conversation with Don, both during his run for governor and subsequent to that. And he is, look, he is a supporter of what we're doing. In other words, the words in that pledge are things that he supports. He supports putting Texas and Texans above all the rest of the nonsense. And if it ever push came to shove, I believe that Don Huffines would do just that. I don't think that he would ever leave us in a lurch. He will be tested. He's the comptroller candidate, and I don't think the Democrats are going to beat him in the general election. So for all intents and purposes, Don Huffines will be the next comptroller of the state of Texas. And that becomes important because in the last session, when the transactional gold bill passed, the comptroller is responsible for the implementation of the transactional gold bill. So having a Texas First pledge signer in the office of the comptroller administering that program is absolutely massive. But his campaign was rocked a little bit by that whole thing about his family purchasing Zorro Ranch, and people wanted to make it sound like he was in bed with Epstein and and all this dirty nonsense. And I'm here to tell you, it's a bunch of bull crap. It's just absolute garbage. And I'm going to tell you where. So the fact that his family bid at auction on that property, among everything else, because Epstein's property was being liquidated, right? It was being liquidated to satisfy all of the survivor claims against the estate. Everybody who bid on that property knew if they won it, that money would go to the estate, and the estate would end up paying that settlement with the survivors of Epstein. That was not a secret. But what was a bit of a secret is that Don's intention, stated from the very beginning, was to effectively do what happened when the West, when Europe was Christianized, and go turn a site that had been devoted to darkness and paganism and effectively devil worship, take it and essentially enlighten that site. Right? He wanted to put a Christian camp there to effectively reconsecrate, make sacred that particular ground. And I may be putting it in more dramatic terms than probably Don did or Don thought about, but the bottom line is it's about a 2,000-year-old tradition, well, 1,700 years of Christians Christianizing sites that were devoted to dark things. And so I don't know, whatever you may feel about that is irrelevant to the fact that there was no wrongdoing on Don's part. And look, I'm not here. If you got questions, I'm not here to apologize for Don or answer for him, but I am here to set the record straight with the best information possible. Now, that being said, I also know that you could trace the source of the spin on that thing straight to people connected to Governor Abbott. And I know that Governor Greg Abbott absolutely hates Don Huffines. I know that Huffines, being the comptroller, was not what Greg Abbott wanted. And, Abbott has never really forgiven him for making the run at governor 4 years ago. So the bottom line here is the Zorro Ranch thing was a bit of a nothing burger when you unpack it. And I have to consider the source. And I know that stuff sources all the way right back to some people in the orbit of Greg Abbott and his campaign. And look, Don answered every question about it. He did not, honestly, I think he was a bit surprised by all of it and how it blew up. But he's been totally transparent on it. When people said that, well, he won't let New Mexico authorities out there to investigate, that was bull crap too. They had not asked. When they asked, he said, go get them, Tiger. You do whatever you got to do on this site. Because if Epstein, with Epstein being the scumbag that he was, I think Don probably wants to get to the bottom of that too. Unlike some other people that are out there touting that we really want to expose Epstein, but keep redacting files and keep hiding data and keep hiding information. I got to tell you, Don was at least more transparent and cooperative than those people have been. So that being said, John, look, again, you got to make your own decision. We're grown folks here, right? But you at least deserve to have all of the information about it to make a decision on. And I'm going to tell you, these quote unquote influencers on X were the absolute worst at spreading and spinning this stuff. I mean, it was just absolutely insane. So there we go. Let's see here. Here's a good one. All right, this is from YouTube. It says, good evening, Mr. Miller. What is your view on the idea of Texas not becoming independent, but instead joining an independent Southern country? Me personally, I'm against it, but what about you? I will tell you, I have been very clear, and not just about that. When people say, thank you for the question, by the way, but when people say this about, Texas needs to leave with a bunch of other states and all this other stuff, kind of like why I have said previously that I don't like the term national divorce, because a couple of things. Number one, it presupposes that the United States is a nation, and it's not. The United States is not one people. But number two is it completely ignores what the process is. States don't leave together. States, as sovereign entities, get a choice, and each one can choose to stay or leave uh, as they wish. And so, on the other side of that, to your question, the people that are out there that are, whether it's a federation of red states or any of this, you have to understand both of those things are completely contrary to our mission. What is the mission? The political, cultural, and economic independence of the nation of Texas, right? So just that first sentence in our mission is very clear. It presupposes the existence of a Texan nation, which it is, right? It meets all the definition. We are a state. Go look at the Montevideo Convention. If anybody has any questions about that, we fit the definition. We meet all the criteria internationally, right? As well as even the academic definitions of internal recognition, external recognition. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? So we're there. So the nation is the people. Texas, the state of Texas, is the state, and the country is the land under our feet. So, the fact of the matter is that, when people talk about this independent Southern country, well, that doesn't exist, right? That there is no independent Southern country. For that to happen, essentially what would have to happen is states that are in the South would have to withdraw from the Union and then completely give up their entire sovereign character, their borders, their customs, their history, their political systems, erase their borders, and become this amalgamated thing. And I can tell you, even if you went to a state in the union right now and said, "Hey, Louisiana, Mississippi, y'all should just be one thing," um, they wouldn't tolerate it, right? Because all the states have, from their very beginning or their very foundation or creation, have over time created their sovereign, independent national character. That's just the reality of it. So some people say, well, what about Texas leaves the union, these states leave the union, and then on the other side, they enter into an alliance with one another? Well, what does that look like? Are you trying to set up a, United States version 2.0 or a Confederate States version 2.0? Because in all of those scenarios, every single one, no matter how you remix the states, it involves each state taking its newly found regained control and sovereignty and shuffling it off to another institution, giving it away, handing it off to another institution that will eventually descend into the same craziness that we see out of the federal government right now. People say, well, you could put checks and balances. Well, look, what if I can't fix the old one? How in the world do you think we're ever going to fix the new one? Right? How do you think that's possible? It is a structural problem, right? So Texas either should be an independent nation or it shouldn't be, right? And just changing and saying, well, we're going to be part of this club now instead of this club over here is absolutely foolish, because it rejects the central idea of our mission, which is that Texas is perfectly capable of governing itself. We're the 8th largest economy in the world. We got more territory than Carter's got liver pills, man. The people, the population, I mean, we outrank so many other countries across so many measures. We have so much going right. Why do we need to give up self-government to some other body that's not us? So look, I appreciate the question, and I understand why you're against it, because I'm against it too. You're either for Texas independence or you're not. And if people are not for Texas independence, then what are they doing? What is the purpose? Well, I want to change masters. Well, why bother? If you're going to be a slave over here, you might as well be a slave over here. What are you hoping that this one treats you better? Ridiculous. You asked, and I answered. So thank you for that question. Much appreciated. Excuse me. All right, let's go take a look over here. Mm-mm-mm. Okay. Fun. All right. Let's get over here to the email. Okay. Oh, I knew it was coming. Yeah. Okay. So this one's from John. John says the new Texian app is certainly exciting. With so many new features to help us grow the movement, could you touch briefly on how you envision this new tool meshing with the existing TNM web presence? What are the big changes? What's going away? What's staying? And how can we best use them? It's a great question. So, John, from what I understand, you're asking about sort of the forward looking now that the app is launched. What comes next? Okay. For those of you who don't know, go back and watch last week. I talked about it at the very beginning, but we have what is now the most solid backbone technological infrastructure that we've ever had. Supporters of Texas independence literally have more tools in the palm of their hand than they have ever had. More than major campaigns. Greg Abbott, with his hundreds of millions of dollars, doesn't even have what we have. And not that he couldn't do it, but they haven't, probably because they don't want to spend on it. But the fact of the matter is, we did this on our own, and we did it because for us to do what we need to do, we need the tools to make it happen. And that's effectively what it does. And so, John, to your question about what is it going to replace, what's going to go away. So here are some key things to understand about what's going away. Already we know TNM Social is now here, right? Everything that was on TNM Social, our internal social network, because it is what we envisioned. We initially set up TNM Social to eventually become what we're getting out of Texian. It failed. It's gone. It's gone bye-bye, right? So we have that. We have the county dashboard, the county portal that has been used for people to connect with their counties and for our county leadership to have the tools to organize those people in those counties so that we can build the field, the ground game, just the ground game at the county level, because that's always been part of the vision, right? And I'm not going to go into all of the rationale behind that, but that's always been the vision, right? Almost since the very inception of the TNM is county level infrastructure. And so all of those tools that are over there, they are all moving here, and that site will go away. Vote.tnm.me, which is the landing page for people to register support, will go away. Okay. The supporter registration form on the main page will stay. Okay. So that's not going anywhere. The Speakers Bureau page will stay. The About page that we have will be moving back to the main site. There are some really cool things that are getting ready to happen with the TNM business directory because of the launch of the Texian app, and it's really helped move that off a dead center. But one of the major changes, one of the main key change that's going to happen that many of you are going to see is the membership site, right? So I guess it was 2 years ago, we spun membership off of the main site onto its own separate space where people could execute and manage their memberships. That is all going to end up on the Texian app. Support. So when people send in support emails, if you have a problem with your membership or with a donation or whatever, that's all going to the Texian app. Essentially, the Texian app becomes the core of everything that we do, right? And so it will integrate in so that we still have all of these public facing features on the TNM website. We will continue to have the Texian Partisan. We already have the Texian store. We'll have all those things, but the public facing side of it will be still, what we're doing with the TNM. But once you step across the threshold into your relationship with the TNM, you will have access to a whole new world within the Texian app, and you will be able to manage your entire relationship with the TNM and with other people in the TNM and with organizing and volunteering and campaigns and all of those sorts of things in this one space. And so, that's gonna take a lot of the burden off of trying to spin these things up. When we spin up campaigns on the Texian app, they will be coupled not just within the app, just the functions for a campaign, but there will be public facing pages. So when you go share a petition, there will be a front facing petition page that the public can go to. And so there are a lot of those things like that that's going to happen. But it's going to be really, if I was going to condense it down and help you explain, if it's public facing, people that have not established a relationship, that's the TNM website. But once they step inside that door and establish a relationship with the TNM, then everything, and I mean everything, that an organization that is trying to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish is done within the Texian app. That's why it has videos. We're field testing the online courseware, right? Stuff that was on TNM Social now moved over here. We're adding that. That's a feature that probably will hit before the start of next week. We've got petitions and campaigns and the relational organizing and everything else. That's all running and gunning right now. Everything beyond those core functions is fixing bugs, enhancing features, doing those things. And, we knew that was going to be a bit of a shakedown cruise. So, that being said, to the last part of your question, how can you best use it? My advice, not necessarily just to you, John, but to everyone out there, is if you have an existing relationship with the TNM, then go reset your password. If you haven't been texting app, go reset your password, get into the app, and explore every feature. Go participate in the listed campaigns. Go look at the events. Go find your county group and start posting in there, because now you're grouped in with everybody in your county. And the more you can communicate and connect with each other, it's incredible. The other thing too, and if you've got the mobile app, which the mobile app is live right now, in both the Apple App Store and the Android Store. And because Apple is dragging their feet, actually Android users have the most recent version of the app. So go check out the networking features so that you can connect with your contacts and see who may already be on the app. And if they're not, there's all kinds of contact tools that you can use. I've used them. Quite a few of them already. The share cards are really my favorite thing. Great. I just spilled a little bit of coffee on my desk. I'm going to have to be careful. Anyway, that's the way that it works. So, John, hopefully that answers your question. Real quick before I move on to some of the other questions, a reminder: if you're joining us for the first time, if you came late, this is Late Night Coffee Talk. I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and I'm taking your questions on the TNM, Texit, Texas independence, Texas politics, taking it live. Drop your questions in the chat wherever you're watching this, or you can email them to, you'll see the email address at the bottom, coffeetalk@thetnm.org. Thank you very much. See, thank you, Kara. She knows I'm getting a little exuberant here. I'm excited about the app. It's a big deal. Okay, let's get back to our questions. Okay, let's tackle this. Lee has asked, Daniel, can you mention resolutions? Absolutely. Resolutions. Check. No, I know what you're talking about. So what Lee is asking about, or asking me to talk about, is that the Republican conventions, there have already been, at my understanding, well, I mean, I know for a fact, some places have held their precinct conventions already. County and SD conventions are coming up. And there are 3 resolutions that we sent out in a resolution packet that we are recommending. If you did not get that email, go check the Texian Partisan. The link to download them is at it's So, in one of the stories about it, it literally is in TNM News, so you'll see it. You'll be able to find it. But the bottom line here is we emailed it out, we sent it out. Again, proof positive why we need the Texian app so that we can communicate with you without our emails going into your spam folders and having to deal with censorship and all that kind of nonsense. Okay. So we have 3 different resolutions, and I'm not going to go into what all 3 of them are, but if you're interested, go check them out. But those are the 3 that we are moving. Now, does that mean that we won't see others that that we are supporting? Absolutely. That happens an awful lot. But you got to understand it was kind of an interesting conversation because when Nate Smith and I were talking about it, because Nate helped craft the resolutions, put together the resolution packet. I'd had a set, and it was weird because as I went through some of the ones that I said, I really want these on the resolutions packet. He would go, "Hey, that's already in the Republican Party platform. It's now plank, fill in the blank, whatever it was." This one, he says, "Hey, we already got that in the plank." And so, like, as we're going through the list, it's like we're back to the 3 he proposed because so much of what we advocate is already in there. It's already there. Have we seen it operationalized or acted upon by the legislature? No, but that's really our fault, right? Collectively. I don't mean as an organization. I mean individually. If we're not holding these guys' feet to the fire on these particular things, and so it's amazing. Whether it's outside funding for campaigns, whether it's getting the Alamo pulled out of UNESCO or any of the. I mean, it's just they're there, right? The calls are there. So there have been some that have been floated to us that are effectively poison pills, right? Some of our people have been approached to support some that seemingly sound good on the surface. One of them, somebody's asking for, in this resolution, they're calling for citizen initiative and referendum. And on the surface, it looks like it would be something we would want, right? Because we want a referendum on Texas independence. The problem with it was specifically that anything that touched on the Texas budget was exempted, forbidden from having a referendum. And so were that platform plank, because we have to remember they're not passing laws here, they're putting ideas on the platform, but were that thing to pass, it would effectively undercut our call for a referendum on Texas independence, because there's no way that you take a referendum on Texas independence and it doesn't touch on the Texas budget, and therefore would be against the law, right? If they were to pass this through and use it verbatim and craft a law around it. So, there's things like that. I got a text this morning, and Chris, I'll respond back to you. It's been a bit of a crazy day. There's a resolution potentially about Texas passports. But here's a piece of information for those of you that are going to the Republican conventions, and I need your help. Something is happening, and I'm working on something, and I need some intel. So if any of you out there see any resolutions making their way through calling for legalizing casino gambling, don't care where you are. It's not about where you are on that particular issue, but it's a piece of information that I need. If you see a resolution making its way through about that thing, please let me know. And you guys all have the address. You can even send to the Coffee Talk address. I mean, they all get monitored, but send it, but let me know, because there's something afoot and I just need confirmation about something. So please do me that favor. Everybody keep your eyes and ears open. If you hear it, if you see it, please let me know. All right. Oh, and by the way, that question came from Lee, who is in chat on the Texian app. So Lee, resolutions mentioned. All right, let's get over here and take a look. Ooh, that's a very weighty topic. Hang on, it's going to be a long one. So give me a second. I'll get to that when that came in the chat. Okay. Yes. Chris asks, he says, Daniel, how does Texas rank among other states when it comes to receiving a majority of campaign donations that originate from outside of the state? This very likely comes from a post that I made on the Texian app this week, asking people what their guess was, like what percentage of campaign contributions came in from outside of Texas. And I mean, as always, the guesses were pretty high. I mean, I think I wish I could find that graphic. I don't think I have it on here anymore. But there was a graphic that we showed during after the Abbott and Beto O'Rourke governor's race about how much of their funding came from out of state and from out of state donors and things of that nature. And it was, it was excessive. I think Abbott was at what, 30 something percent, maybe. I can't remember what it was. But that being said, I posted it because I wanted to get guesses because, well, I'm working on that very thing right now. And here's you a sneak peek. Yeah. So here's your sneak peek, boys and girls. We've mapped kind of everything, all these little dots, right? Here's Greg Abbott's campaign or his campaign pack, and here's all these various packs that they have, and with contributions, expenditures, and everything else. So the data's here. It's being mapped, as are all the networks of where these contributions come in from. And obviously, the next step, well, not necessarily the next step, but one of the next steps is to trace all the sources of the revenue. Because here's what I have found out so far, and this is preliminary results, Chris. But what I have found out so far is that the way that campaign finance works, the way the machine operates, intentionally obscures origin to donor, or excuse me, origin to recipient. Okay. So, random guy in random state that's not Texas gives $1 million. He may give it to a C4. He may give it to a super PAC like a federal 527, right? And then maybe it goes to a PAC here in Texas, who then takes it and gives it to another PAC that then distributes it. So the question is, when those funds come in and they all mingle together, how do you separate all that stuff out? How do you track out of state dollar to the recipient? So that is a very it's not an easy math problem. It's not an easy investigation problem, but it can be untangled. There's just a lot of crazy math that goes along with it. But I'm gonna tell you that I suspect, if I had to guess at this point, I would say that probably 33 cents out of every dollar that wound up spent in a campaign came from out of state this cycle so far, right? No guarantee on that one, but that's where my gut tells me that it's headed, and I will know more soon. And as soon as I know, I dropped something. As soon as I know, you shall know as well. There we go. My desk was too high. It's driving me crazy. Okay, but yeah, I'm working on it, and as you can see, it's a lot of fun and highly visual. It's quite nice. That thing's actually rather pleasant to look at when you completely ignore what it represents, which is the stranglehold they have on Texas voters, right? Okay, here we go. Here's a question from Eric. Eric asks, a poll I saw this week has Tallarico leading Paxton and Cornyn by nearly 10 points. The void he creates in the Texas ledge will be easy to fill, but I don't think his candidacy in the U.S. Senate will move the needle for us. If Cornyn is reelected, that would provide the TNM with the biggest bang, but do we, the TNM, really want that? Okay, so let me unpack this because I'm not entirely sure what the ask is here. But let me just unpack it, and maybe in the process of unpacking it, I'll be able to figure out exactly what the question is. But let's start with the first part, which is polls showing Tallarico leading Paxton and Cornyn. First off, I will tell you that, and this is another part of the post-election analysis that I've got to do. I'm trying to collect more data on this. But this goes back to all the way back to 2015 and 2016. And here's the reality that no one wants to talk about, is that polling is broken. It is fundamentally, absolutely shattered broken. And you know this because if polling was anywhere remotely accurate, 2016 would have given you President Hillary Clinton. Okay. But it would have also given you Brexit still in the EU. And if the Brexit thing, honestly, the Brexit polling provided us with a very clear view of how to do polling so that you can get more accurate results. Everyone just ignored it because it skewed against conventional wisdom. But these polls are, literally, we're at the point now where political polling is less accurate than your weatherman. And weathermen used to get garbage all the time. I mean, people used to just break their stones for their inaccuracies all the time. But the reality is that political polling is broken. I'm going to drag you back to, and I don't know if we did it as a Texas News podcast or it was an article, I can't remember, but it was comparing two polls on secession. So it was back when, I think when we got the Newsweek cover, right around that time, I think they did the Redfield Strategies poll. And then right after that, someone had commissioned a YouGov poll where they started polling the various states. And one of the states they polled was California. And so unbeknownst to the people at YouGov, because apparently the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand there, the Independent California Institute or Institute for California Independence, I forget, I always get the name backwards, but they had commissioned a poll, essentially similar subject matter, different wording on the question, but the same subject matter about California leaving the Union. And what they got, and I mean, it was literally, these things were being conducted at the same time. The results came back and essentially showed that by how they worded the questions, the first poll that had been commissioned by some media outlet wound up with a result that was, I think, 25 points less than the poll that was commissioned by the ICI. And it really boiled down to how the question was asked and worded. We say this all the time. The wording that we want on the referendum for independence really matters, okay? But it compressed the results. And so, you go back and you start examining the polling, particularly on our issue, and you see that, across the board, the wording that they ask is horrendous. And so they are artificially suppressing the results in favor of independence by, on average, anywhere from 20 to 30%. Okay. So you got this compression. So anytime you see something like the Redfield Strategies poll or any of these other polls that are done by these mainstream guys, what you're looking at, particularly on our issue, what you're looking at probably 99% of the time, because of the way they word the question, is about a 25% compression in support. Okay, so you take whatever that number is, you put 25 percentage points on, that's the real number. So that's what we had suspected. It's what we now know. But more than that, broadly beyond the Texas issue, let's look at political polling, right? So all of the polls, and let's just take the Paxton, Cornyn, Wesley Hunt primary. Okay, all of those polls leading up to that primary showed Paxton almost at 50%, to the point that many of his supporters, and word is some people internally thought that there was a shot that Paxton was going to win it outright. Okay, but pretty close to 50%. And then Cornyn was down here sometimes in the low 30s, right? I mean, he was real low. And then Wesley Hunt was always pretty much scraping the bottom of the barrel. But come election results, that's not what happened at all. And it wasn't just that race, right? So the outcomes of so many of these races were so vastly different than what the pollsters had said. I mean, you had polls come out, I think the University of Texas, Texas Tribune, I can't remember who, but I mean, it was like this crazy poll. And it was like, I mean, the numbers were so wildly off. We're going back and trying to collect all those and try to match them up against. And I think ultimately you're going to find the result is what we've been saying, which is polling is broken. It is not reliable in any shape, form, or fashion, beyond the fact that candidates and organizations, everybody else, they will commission them in a certain way to get the result they want to get, and it helps set the narrative, right? So that sort of thing happens, and that would be nefarious. And there's that one side of it, but the other side of it is, frankly, these pollsters don't know what the hell they're doing. It's honestly the biggest grift in politics right now. If you saw how much money candidates and PACs spend on polling firms to do this polling, I mean, if I was paid that much and did as crappy of a job as the pollsters, I would never get a single bit of tech work again, ever, never. I would never get another client. But yet, time and time again, they go to these people, and yeah, I don't know. I have my suspicions as to why that might be, but polling's broken. So let's just take that part of it, right? So even though it's got Tallarico leading Paxton Cornyn by 10 points, it really doesn't matter. I mean, that race hasn't started, and that's part of the consternation about these two ending up in a runoff, is they are going to absolutely brutalize one another. Will that mean you're going to have a Senator Tallarico? I don't think so. This whole primary thing is something else people get wrong, right? This primary thing is not necessarily indicative of what's going to happen at the general election. So when everybody panicked because the Democrats were having better turnout than the Republicans in the primary, it's all smoke. I mean, it was all BS, because it doesn't matter. That has literally nothing to do with what's going to go down in the general election. Can it be an indicator? Maybe. If suddenly, you've got one party or the other going, well, I really don't care who's on the other end of the ballot, right? So, it doesn't have any bearing on it. So if Cornyn is reelected, that will provide TNM with the biggest bang. I'm kind of at the point, neither one of them are Texas first place signers, right? I've got opinions on both of them. I have never been a fan of John Cornyn, not for a single second. For a myriad of reasons, and that distrust and dislike, and it's not a personal dislike because I don't know him personally, but a distaste and dislike for his policies goes way, way back, even pre-TNM, because look, you got to remember, Cornyn was like the AG here in Texas. And if you go back and you look at the things that he did here as AG in Texas, that will give you a lot of insight into perhaps why I don't care for him and why maybe you shouldn't as well. So, yeah, I mean, we're at the risk of sounding cliche and, like every other person on X, we are closely monitoring the situation. Okay, let's see what we got, because we are running out of time. All right. Hey, a big thank you to Chris Powell for your super chat on YouTube, 1999. He says, I got invited to be on our SD7 resolutions committee today. Congratulations, sir. You know what to do, right? So good for you. Glad you got that. That's going to be super exciting. All right. Tell you what, I'll take one more. Let's take this one real quick. If we become independent, why can't we have a one-party system? Seems we would want unity and what is best for all Texans and get away from the division. And effectively, you have one party now. You really do, and it's like, if you look at party politics here in Texas, you kind of have a party, right? They got some disagreements on some policies, but they do work in lockstep. Um, having a solitary political party, I don't know, is the best course of action there, right? My thought is, why don't we just have more than one? Why don't we have more than two? Why don't we let anybody who wants to participate in the process participate in the process? Right? That's kind of what free markets do, right? I mean, you want to let products out there. You want to be able to choose from the products and pick the one that's best for you. Why is that not happening with party politics? But what's happened is the two parties have become so grafted into the political system that it's impossible for any party outside of those two to participate. And it's just they have built up this firewall that prevents real competition. So it becomes almost like a two-step process where the party process is the preliminary step before the big show. So it's divorce political parties from the Texas election code, let anyone compete in political parties, or go completely nonpartisan like you do in mayoral elections or whatever. I mean, that's kind of your alternatives to what you have right now. So thank you for that. Okay, so Texas number one. That's the question, and I really wish I had time to get to this. It's a big question, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm at least going to flash it on the screen because I'm out of time, but I'm going to flash it on the screen as a reminder that maybe what I would like to do is do an editorial on the Texian Partisan and answer your questions. So I'm putting up here as a reminder to remind me to get that done, and be looking for it on the Texian Partisan, because that's where I'll answer. And they'll give me a chance to answer a little more in depth, to put a lot of thought into it without being rushed through all of these various questions. Okay, thank you guys so very much. Man, there's one more. I just don't have the time. I'm out of time. Okay, friends, that I do believe is going to be a wrap for tonight. Thank you guys. The questions have been phenomenal, and so I do enjoy this. I do enjoy having this banter with you guys. And that being said, the banter can continue over on the Texian, Texian.app. You've heard me mention it a bunch. Go get on the app, right? Go get plugged in. Look, this is where Texas independence starts. It's where you can organize. It's where you can act. It's where you can connect with other people who share your vision for a free, independent, self-governing nation of Texas. Additionally, if you have not gone over to the Texian store and grabbed some swag as of late, like the coffee mug that I'm holding now that is pictured on the screen, head over there and do that. TexianStore.com. That's TexianStore.com. And of course, you've heard me mention it already, the Texian Partisan, the official news site of the Texas Nationalist Movement. But it's not just the TNM, it's so many other things that examine everything that's going on in Texas and the world through the lens of Texas nationalism. So it really is the only news outlet for people like us. And so go check it out, TexianPartisan.com. Additionally, look, if you've got questions about Texit or the Texit process, we have a website for you. It's called TexitNow.org. Head over to TexitNow.org and find the largest compiled list of questions and answers related to Texit and the Texit process, and dispel those myths, rumors, fear, uncertainty, doubt. You combat all that with knowledge, and TexitNow.org is where you're going to get it. Okay, friends, that is a wrap. So, what I would like to do is thank you all very much for joining me this week. I'm looking forward to next week. Look, if you have a question when this is all over with that you didn't get a chance to answer, you forgot, email it over to coffeetalk@etnm.org, right? Those things accumulate, they don't just pop up and disappear, but they do in the chat, right? So, if you had one tonight that you wanted to ask, didn't get a chance to, go send it to coffeetalk@etnm.org. Or go post on the Texian app. Just go post. Make that your first post. I have a question. I didn't get it answered tonight, and I will be there to drop you an answer. So, that being said, that is a wrap. I'm going to leave you with the words I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words, they're the words of Sam Houston. When he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations, I believe that time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.